Back in the old days, you could take a Crown DC300A, put the outputs together, and carbon arc weld with it.
Yes.
Crown is one of our sister companies, as is DBX. We're all part of the Harman Group. That includes, I heard you talk about a little bit about AKG. That's one of our sister companies, DBX, BSS. I can't miss anybody here. Soundcraft, Studer for consoles.
It's like making an acceptance speech at the Emmys. You don't want to miss anybody, so you just say everybody at Harman.
Yeah. Well, the point is that when we develop the products and we integrate a DBX circuit and a Crown circuit, we're using that stuff to tune the boxes. We're using that to develop products. We all share technology with each other. So there's this symbiotic relationship that goes on, and there's a lot of shared learning that goes on between the companies. What that does is, that means that our education from experience is kind of on an exponential scale, because we're all sharing technology with each other and learning experiences and research and development, and we are a kind of a big giant worldwide team, and we all benefit from each other's technological advances.
Absolutely. Now, Richard, if I may pose some questions from our viewers right now in our chat room online at live.scottydonline.com. We've got a couple people that are asking some questions in the chat room, and one of the questions is, does JBL make computer-style speakers that can be used for small desktop monitoring if you got a little studio that you got going on? And the second...
JBL Consumer sure does. Not JBL Professional, at least not yet. What we do make, and what I'm very excited about, in the recording and broadcast field, we make LSR 2300s, and so you can get a 5-inch and a tweeter, 2325s, and a little subwoofer to go with it. And if somebody's into gaming at their computer or home recording, what you have, we like to call it studio to the stage. You can do your production, do your creative on JBL speakers, and then when you go out and try to recreate or reproduce that live, you're going through JBL speakers that are, it's all coming from the same DNA.
Right. That's the 2325. I'm writing this down.
And for those of you who are watching the show, after the show, we're going to have a link up in our past guest area at the top of the screen that you'll be able to link directly over to the JBL Professional area, view all of their products and whatnot that they've got going on from the professional side, and then from there dovetail yourself into the consumer models as well. Now, Richard, are the PRX600 Series, are they bi-amped like the Eons? That's another question that we've got coming in from the chat room.
Yes, there's not a passive crossover in there. It's a complete digital crossover. There's an amplifier dedicated to the low frequencies and the high frequencies. We're of course using DBX technology to do all of this signal processing that goes on in there. They are bi-amped, yes. To answer that question simply, I think what the listeners need to embrace is what actually happens in a closed system architecture. Everything that would be in a sound guy's rack is built in digitally in front of that amplifier. And, we go in and we tune that, and we make sure the gain structures work, and we make sure everything's clean. And so you've got limiters and crossovers and EQs, and it's all working together. And it really is a symbiotic relationship inside of that box, and the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. In fact, I would go as far as to say it would be very difficult to take the raw components in a passive mode with a big signal chain and make them sound better than they do as a powered unit.
Amazing.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on some of these, considering the length and the age of the rig that I've been rolling out, and to be able to lighten the load.
And let me just give you an idea. When we do the development and the tuning of the box. We call it the tuning of the box. It doesn't happen in a day. I mean, this takes place over months, and the engineers are doing critical measurements, and they do ground plane measurements, and they fly the speakers, and we do what we call a spinorama, where we check all of the off-axis and on-axis responses, and it's a very scientific thing that gets to a certain point where, you know, I come into play and work with the engineers, and we tweak it, you know, we make it musical, you know.
Right. Now, on the PRX600s, because they are completely powered speakers, I'm curious to know what the spread broadcast range in a radius is from one screen at the 600. I mean, are you getting a full 180 coverage on one set of speakers, or what's the coverage?
It's 90 by 50 coverage pattern on the horn.
Yeah, that's good. You know, a lot of vendors out there are, you know, they're claiming the 180, if not the 360, and I'm just kind of curious on where this one was going.
Well, you know, this is a pretty, you know, it's a pretty standard horn. I mean, you know, you put two speakers up, you got 180 degrees, right?
Right.
And you know, on either side of a band, I don't want to call it generic, you know, but it's kind of a standard that works.
Yeah, and there's an advantage in that too, in that if you are setting up a live sound situation, especially in where it's a portable environment, you're going into some place that you haven't been. You could be up on a stage in a civic center. You could be in the corner of a convention room, whatever. You really need to be able to control that pattern. And generic is, you know, probably a good word for it, because if you know what they're going to do and you go in and you set them up, there's not going to be any surprises.
Well, you know, it's predictable, right?
Exactly. That's what predictable.
And that's what it needs to be, you know. And you need to have a wide dispersion, because not everybody's going to be directly in front of the speaker. You know, people are going to be off axis, and the speaker still needs to maintain its intelligibility.
Absolutely. And
these speakers also went through the 100-hour test, I'm going to assume?
Well, I'll tell you a good story. We had some visitors here, and when we were in the final stages of development, I said, okay, hey, you know, why don't I take you down to the test room? When you go into the test room, there's an anteroom, if you will, in front of it that has about 20 computer monitors in it. Those monitors are displaying information that's coming from the speakers that are in the torture test room, right? And, you know, because there's sensors on all of the speakers, and we're taking data back on what's heating up, what's not, you know, how it's being impacted by the torture test. Before you go into the room, you have to put on some industrial strength hearing protection, right? Because it's very dangerous to go in that room without hearing protection. You go out of that main room into a hallway, which there's just racks and racks of crown amps, and they're all hooked into jacks in the room. And then when you go in the room, the last time I was in there, we had like 7 or 8 of the subwoofers, about 10 or 12 of the various top cabinets, PRX600 top cabinets, and then there was a smattering of other product that was being tested as well. When you walked in the room, literally, you couldn't hear anything. I think we took a dB meter in there with us. It was about 148 dB in the room.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, you had to have hearing protection on it.
No way you couldn't go. If you did take those, and by the way, if you took those, the hearing protection off while you were in the room trying to be Mr. Strongman He-Man, you would walk out deaf.
You'd be deaf, yeah.
Yeah, you have some bleeding orifices.
The sound pressure in that room, to feel that, it was incredible, man. I mean, it was amazing. And of course, the guests, when we got out of the room and went into the anteroom, they were absolutely blown away. And it's an impressive thing, and it's an important thing that JBL does. You know, I'm pretty sure no one else does that. I mean, we hold ourselves to an incredible standard.
Absolutely. Now, as we kind of wrap everything around this, now with this 100-hour test with the PRX600 Series, another question that came in from the chat room was, what's the expected life roll, kind of the to birth to death of these speakers as you put them into to circuit?
Not sure I understand the question.
What's the
expected life cycle of these
well,
speakers?
That depends on the conditions that they're used under, right? Like anything, we've all seen the little old ladies in the 1960 Bel Airs, driving around, and they kept them in a garage and never drove them. The life expectancy is, I don't even know, 10, 15 years?
Well,